Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talk. So today, Kathy and I are talking all about our conversation with the Stanford golf coach who really opened our eyes to the way she's doing things, raising a family, being a female coach, trying to figure out whether she's going to stay in female coaching. Our questions that we talked with Anne about were really all about, does a team have to get along to be successful? How do you manage your competitive spirit? How do you really compete for what matters to you while you're competing against a friend to be able to go for the same position? In her case, to be able to travel and to be on the Stanford golf team. So Kathy, we had a great conversation. Team, love for you to listen to it. And Kathy, what really came out in this dialogue is just that internal struggle that women have with, are we good enough? How can we have kind of everything that we want? How do we compete? How do we manage all of this? We have that internal and we're wrestling with the external. And as you said it beautifully, it's like professionally, we are working with men and we've got to figure out how to do this together in a way that really supports each other.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked to a couple of women coaches now, and I agree. I thought Anne just gave us some great insights. Kirsten Bernthal Booth, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and and both of them talked about the struggle, the tipping point for them of when they were thinking, my own kids. I love my team, but my own kids have to be my priority, at this point. And so am I going to be able to do both of these well? Now, both of them are doing it well. Okay. So Anne coaching one of the most successful women's golf teams in the country. Kirsten at Creighton, very successful, leading the Big East again this year in terms of women's volleyball. There are women out there who are not in their positions, okay? And so it's not like this is just kind of okay, well, be Kirsten, be Anne, if you're in the middle of the pack, if you're at the bottom of the pack, and
if you're at D2 or D3, I mean, we're talking to D1 coaches.
Yeah, but I mean, if your team's not winning, I think that adds a whole nother layer. And you would be able to speak to this as a mother, is the whole thing that a mother's only as happy as their
least unhappy
kid. Yeah. And so now we talk about, all right, hey, if things are fine with the kids, things are fine with the kids. Well, what about when one of the kids isn't fine? Now where do the choices come in? Now, where does the struggle, am I being an adequate mom? And then your team is losing. Oh, am I being an adequate coach? So these are very, very real struggles that I don't hear you doing it. I don't hear any of the women that we're interviewing doing it, but these do not have simple answers. We say, hey, we want to find a system that is changing, that's different. This is going to be very, very difficult.
Well, team, if you're just joining us today, Kathy and I are on a journey. We're writing a book called How Women Win Our Way. And we don't know the answers. We're here to figure it out. We've had the honor of interviewing amazing women, and we want to hear from you if you're a woman. We want to hear from you from a podcast perspective, or we have a survey that you can fill out. It's howwomenwin.com. You can be involved in this journey with us. We so value hearing from you because, as Kathy said, this is a tough one and we're committed to it. We're like, we are going to figure this out. We know in our generation what we've done. We've also been honored to be inside the next generation. And me as a mom, I've been raising a couple different generations. So there's a lot of great transformation happening. And Kathy and I want to capture it. We want to figure this out. So if you're interested in being on the journey, go to howwomenwin.com. You can get in touch with me in terms of being on our podcast, or you can answer our survey. So, Kathy, what's so important to me is that I want to talk about where we are right now because our guests have done a beautiful job of being where they are. And they're in the middle of raising young children, they're in the middle of raising championship teams. You and you're in a position as an executive director, you're in a position of really that administrative. And one thing that Anne said beautifully was, our bosses and the people that are hiring and really running our programs don't look like us. They are not managing the same kind of things. What are your words of wisdom as we talk about this kind of change?
This is hard. I will tell you as a boss, all right? Um, we're one person short right now in the busiest part of our year because we celebrated the birth of a baby 5 weeks ago. And, you know, it was somebody who had a major role in our organization. And we hope to welcome her back in another, I think I've got the days counted, 21 days, because it can't happen soon enough. And again, you always have this fear as a boss, is she going to come back? Is she going to decide, you know what, this is pretty cool? So that's one. Second, we had a baby, we call them ABCA babies. We had a baby in February. And again, cute little guy, fun, saw him in his Halloween costume and everything else. Okay, daycare called today. We're in the middle of the last week before our convention. It is chaos here. I got to go get him from daycare. He's got a fever. Okay. And again, husband is coaching a team that is playing today, so no option for him to do it. I don't look like the guys that we're talking about that we're saying, oh, come on, get a clue. Yeah. And yet I will tell you, I mean, when I heard it this afternoon, I did everything I could to keep my countenance and my face, and my employee said, Kathy, I'm really sorry. And it was like, hey, he's sick. I hope he feels better. I tried to say the right things, but there is this feeling that you're not carrying your part of the load here. You're not apologizing. You have a sick child there. So I don't want to kick it too much here because I think you know the point, but it just flipping who's in charge doesn't take away some of the issues of how do we get the work done and who's going to do it when you're not here. Not that we think you ought to be here. No, we know where the priority is, but who's going to do it when you're not here?
Well, and Kathy, Ann demonstrated that beautifully. She talked about the power of her team, right? She's got assistant coaches. She's utilizing them. As she said, most assistant or most head coaches want to be in control, male or female, right? It's like we want to control everything. And so we think that we have to do every component. And what a beautiful model Ann is demonstrating is by saying, I'm not going to do it all. I'm actually going to do what I can. I'm going to engage my assistant coaches and empower my assistant coaches to really do their part. I do believe that's the answer. I think what's different is really all of us coming together with the strength of being able to rely on each other rather than that demanding pressure of one person managing everything. And, if I have a human moment and get sick or need a moment, everything's going to fall apart. That's what I'd like our conversation to be about, is how do we change that management of expectations, that I have so much work I have to do and so much that I have to do that if I don't do it, we're not high performing. And I think that's what we're talking about, is how do we win championships in life, in the office, at home, being human and honoring that I can't go all the time.
Right, letting it go. Well, and again, we've talked quite a bit about it. We've just talked about it under the rubric of emotional intelligence.
Right.
When you're on the sideline and your team is a train wreck, right, what happens to you? Is this you failing?
Right.
It's like, no, it's your team failing,
Yeah.
and it's your job to try and help them through it somehow.
Right.
But so it's really, the other side maybe of the same coin, of, yes, I mean, do we put ourselves in situations where we're always present? Not so much because we always need to be present, but because we're afraid that maybe we don't always need to be present,
Yeah.
and
So,
boy, if I'm gone, what if they don't miss me?
yeah. So Kathy,
What if they don't notice?
yeah, well, so now, Kathy, we're talking about that identity piece, which I think also Anne brought up, is that, on the Stanford team, you can have a guy that maybe hasn't played that well at Stanford. And when she's asking him what's next, he's like, well, I'm going pro without any hesitation. And you have a girl that's done well, and she's like, well, I'm not going pro because I'm really not good enough. So what is it as women that we are constantly, this is a blanket statement, so I'm going to take it back before I even give it, but operating from a fear-based perspective that, I have to show up all the time. I'm going to miss something. I'm not going to be good enough. Somebody's going to get ahead of me. I mean, why are we doing that to ourselves? And why is it from an identity perspective that I need everybody to need me? What's happening there?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. When I would talk to groups of young people, Carlette, I would do an exercise with them by gender. All right. I would ask the guys, what about gals? What about women do you envy? Do you wish you were better at? Do you wish you had more of? And I would ask the women the same thing. What about guys? What about the men? Do you envy? Do you wish you had? And it was interesting, no matter where I went around the country, and no matter what the age was, young, old, of the people I was talking to, the answers were always the same.
What were they?
Yeah. Is the men said, well, the women have everything, they always have everything together. I mean, they've got, if it's school, they've got their homework done. If they're supposed to have a plan for something, they've made the plan for it. It's like, how do you do this? They just always seem like they've got it put together and stuff. It's really was quite intimidating to them. And the women always said, it's like the guys are confident of who they are, even when they haven't done squat, or, or if they just do a little thing, they think they've hung the moon. Yeah. And so it was exactly what you're talking about is, women over functioning to try and prove that we're good enough.
Yeah.
And males overconfident and not doing enough to actually be good enough. And again, terrible, terrible generalizations. Right. But it was interesting to me that no matter where I went, into what classroom or what part of the country or what workplace, these were stereotypes that came up each time.
Well, and Kathy, the other thing that Anne shared with us is that really, as much as she pours into her team, that they are good enough, and she devotes herself in relationship to being for them, honoring, respecting, nourishing, that social media and the world is pouring into their brains completely opposite messaging. And the brain is fighting that. If they're in relationship and they're hearing they're good enough, and then they look on social media all the time, right? They got that little box that's telling them a message 24/7. No matter what we show up with as their coaches, as their moms, as their mentors, as their friends, they can be like, well, yeah, that's just you, right? Because you know me, or you care about me, or we could even justify from a sport coach perspective, you need me to perform. So you're telling me that. So isn't it interesting that as women, even when we're getting the validation, we don't receive it?
That's right. That's right. We go, well, you're my mom.
Yeah.
You're supposed to love me. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're right. I could just not love you.
Or, you know, as a
or
sports
you're my
coach,
coach. And
yeah,
it's like, of course you have high expectations. You recruited me and
that's
everything
right.
else, but I'm terrible. Yeah,
And
no,
now I'm not
every
living
coach
up to
has
your
had, yeah,
expectations and I'm
yeah,
devastated, you know?
right, right,
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so I mean,
So
what a gift. I just want, I mean, I know this is what you and I are so passionate about, is that we want to honor who we are as women. We want to love us for our fabulous and our not so fabulous. We want to honor, as Anne said, this fierce heart to love. And yet, for some reason, we don't do a very good job internally. You know, maybe we can do it externally really well. So, you know, my takeaway as how women win on this journey that Anne really shared with us is giving us the gift to do an internal job. How can we be as much for us internally? And really starting to figure out, what do I need? You know, what's my definition of success? Who do I need on my support team? What am I going to do with social media? Who am I going to compare myself to? Who am I going to listen to? Standing up for me and what matters, and actually having the courage and the strength to do it. I mean, that may be where we start.
absolutely, be kind to ourselves, which almost feels selfish to even say, but that's where it has to start, is to be kind to ourselves, which means we forgive ourselves, which means we cut ourselves some slack, which means we recognize we've made mistakes and we will make more, not flippantly, but that we will.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose, but that will probably mess it up again. Yeah, and I thought Anne spoke to those really eloquently.
Well, and Kathy, just to add on to what you said from that perspective, if we can start being kinder to ourselves, then we can be kinder to other women. And that's something you and I are really, you know, we care deeply about. How do we set women up to be for each other instead of coming from a place of exhaustion or not enough or fear or any of those things, so that we're actually competing against another woman, really, rather than being for us. So I think that's our message that Anne did a beautiful job of setting us up for, is just, you know, hearing from her. She's doing a beautiful job at Stanford as the golf coach, winning there, winning at home, of course, not by her definition. She's kind of juggling and figuring it out. I think that's speaking so much to that wrestling match in our head 24/7.
Absolutely, absolutely. The journey continues.
So team, it's up to you. Go out and figure out how women win our way, defining our way. Love what Kathy said about being kind, starting there. Let's be kinder to us, figure out what we need, reach out to our friends, really be in relationship, and start to see how we can show up differently to get a different result. So Kathy, thank you for another great moment in time of figuring out this journey, how women win our way.
Thank you, Carlette.
Okay, team, go out, figure it out. We pass the ball to you. It's up to you. And enjoy being a woman. We've got great qualities. Let's enjoy that fierce heart that we've got and see what we can do to be the change. Thank you.